Midnight threat calls and nasty news articles did not make Christian Cole back down. At the Sunny Horizon Apex lobby, CEO Vivian Sinclair kicked out Christian, a black single dad, with a pink stickered briefcase, mistaking him for a delivery man. Christian actually wanted to find a kind partner to give his $500 million investment. After that, he went on a lonely mission to expose the company's corruption and save innocent workers at the bottom. With help from a retired union leader, can Christian beat the legal traps and protect what he believes in? Before any of that happened, before the threats and the headlines, Christian's mornings looked nothing like a war. At 6:31 a.m., his Chicago kitchen smelled like burnt toast and warm maple syrup. Maya, his 6-year-old daughter, sat on a stool swinging her feet. She hummed a cartoon theme song under her breath. Christian flipped a pancake with one hand and checked his phone with the other. Aegis Capital Group had closed another record quarter. He did not smile about the number. He smiled because Maya had syrup on her chin. He ran a $2.3 billion investment fund from a modest office on the 19th floor. He wore plain T-shirts on weekends. He drove a 7-year-old Honda. People who met him, without knowing his name, often assumed he worked in maintenance. He never corrected them right away. He liked watching what people did before they knew who he was. The kitchen radiator clicked softly against the cold morning air. Steam curled off 2 mugs of coffee on the counter. Outside, Chicago traffic hummed low and steady, 17 floors below their window. Maya's cartoon show buzzed quietly from a tablet propped against the fruit bowl. Christian's own father had worked 41 years on a Detroit assembly line. He never forgot the sound of that man's tired footsteps coming home each night. That memory shaped every decision he made with other people's money now. Wealth without kindness felt hollow to him, no matter how large the number looked on a screen. That morning, Maya reached in her backpack. She pulled out a sticker sheet covered in pink unicorns. She peeled one off and pressed it onto his brown leather briefcase, right on the front flap. "Now it has magic," she said. The briefcase was a Filson, worth $2,419. He did not care. He zipped it shut and kissed the top of her head. His phone buzzed. A calendar reminder blinked red. Flight to Miami, 11:05 a.m. He almost canceled it 3 times that week. A folder had landed on his desk 9 days earlier. Inside was a company called Ethris Logistics. The business ran cargo ships and port operations out of Miami. On paper, it looked healthy. Underneath, the numbers told a different story. Bad loans, vanishing cash, a CEO named Vivian Sinclair, who ran the place like a fortress. Christian's job was simple on the surface. Decide if Aegis should hand over a $500 million rescue deal. Underneath, it was never simple. Money without a good heart behind it just built taller walls. His research team pulled up news photos of Vivian Sinclair at a charity gala the year before. She wore diamonds and smiled for cameras beside senators and celebrities. The caption called her a visionary leader who cared deeply about her workers. Christian read that caption twice, then set the article aside. He had learned long ago that a smile in front of cameras rarely matched the truth behind closed doors. Real answers came from walking into a place unannounced, dressed like nobody important at all. 2 days before his flight, an envelope arrived at his office. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter, the ink pressed hard into the paper like someone had gripped the pen too tight. The writer said his name was Thomas. He said he had worked the Miami docks for 31 years. He said the company had just cut his health insurance to save money. He begged Christian to look past the charts and see the people underneath them. A worn Union card fell out of the envelope when Christian opened it. The plastic had cracked down the middle, held together with a thin strip of yellowed tape. The edges were soft and rounded from years spent inside a wallet. Christian sat with that card in his palm for a long moment. His chest tightened. Numbers on a screen could not do that to him. A stranger's broken plastic card could. He turned it over slowly, reading the faded printed name one more time. He set the card on his desk, propped against his lamp, where he would see it every morning before making a single decision about Miami. He almost said no to the deal that same week. His funds board pushed back hard. Vivian Sinclair fires people to fix her spreadsheets, one partner warned him. She smiles for cameras and guts factories behind closed doors. Another partner slid a printed article across the table, showing 3 previous companies Vivian had run into the ground. Each one ended the same way. Big promises, mass layoffs, then a quiet exit with a large payout. Christian read the article slowly, jaw tightening slightly with each paragraph. Christian thought about Maya. A trip to Miami meant missing her Thursday appointment. Since his wife passed 3 years earlier, he tried never to miss those. He started typing an email to cancel the whole trip. Maya walked into his home office in her pajamas. She climbed onto his lap without asking. "Go help the workers, Daddy," she whispered. "My unicorn will guard me." She said it so plainly, like it was already decided. Christian stared at his daughter's small face for 3 full seconds. He deleted the email. He landed in Miami at 1:47 p.m. The air outside felt thick and salty. He rented a plain gray sedan instead of calling a car service. He wanted to see the city the way regular people saw it, not through tinted glass. That evening, he drove to a rundown diner near the port called Blue Anchor. Grease hung in the air, mixed with the salty tang of the harbor outside. A ceiling fan clicked with every rotation, wobbling slightly on its old mount. Somewhere in the kitchen, a radio played a soft country song under the clatter of pots. He had arranged to meet a man named Arthur Vance. Arthur was 62 years old. His hands were thick and scarred from decades of rope and steel. Calluses lined his palms like old tree bark. He had led the dockworkers union until Etheris fired him 2 years earlier for asking too many hard questions. He wore a faded flannel jacket, soft at the elbows from years of wear. He studied Christian for a long moment before speaking, his eyes sharp under heavy gray brows. Arthur slid a black notebook across the table. Pages of numbers filled it, written in careful, slanted handwriting. The cover was cracked and taped along one edge, like it had traveled through years of pockets and desk drawers. "If you're here to hand Vivian Sinclair a check," Arthur said, "you're helping her bury my people, not save them." Christian did not flinch. He opened the notebook and read for a long time. The numbers painted a picture darker than any official report. "I'm not here to save her," Christian said quietly. "I'm here to find out who deserves saving." Arthur studied him. Something in his face softened, just slightly. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed a hand over his tired eyes. "Most rich men who come down here just want a photo with a dockworker," Arthur muttered. "You might actually be different." The next morning, Christian made a choice that surprised even himself. He would not walk into Etheris headquarters as a billionaire investor. He would walk in looking like nobody at all. He wore dark jeans and a plain gray button-down. He carried the same brown briefcase, pink unicorn sticker and all. He wanted to see how Vivian Sinclair treated people who looked like they had nothing to offer her. The Horizon Apex Hotel sat right on Biscayne Bay. Morning sun bounced off curved glass walls. Gray granite floors gleamed under bright lobby lights. The air smelled of fresh flowers and expensive cologne, layered over the faint chlorine drift from a nearby pool. Soft jazz piped through hidden speakers in the ceiling. Rich guests in tailored suits moved through the space like they owned the air itself. Christian walked in at 9:14 a.m. sharp. His shoes clicked against the polished stone floor, a plain, ordinary sound in a room built for grander footsteps. Vivian Sinclair stood near the check-in desk in an emerald green dress. Her heels clicked against the stone floor with each step. Her dark hair was styled to sharp perfection. She scanned the room like a queen inspecting her court. Her eyes landed on Christian. She looked him over. Plain shoes, plain shirt, a scuffed leather bag with a childish pink sticker on it. Her lips curled slightly. "Deliveries go through the service entrance," she said, not even lowering her voice. "This lobby is for guests only." Christian kept his tone calm. I have a scheduled meeting with your team. Vivian let out a short laugh, sharp as glass breaking. Sweetheart, nobody scheduled a meeting with someone dressed like you. Nearby guests turned to watch. A young white man in wrinkled shorts walked past them straight into the VIP conference room. Nobody stopped him. Nobody asked his name. Vivian snapped her fingers toward two security guards. Get him out. He's disturbing our guests. The guards moved fast. One gripped Christian's arm. The other reached for his briefcase. The bag slipped and hit the floor. The pink unicorn sticker peeled halfway off the leather. Christian did not raise his voice. He did not fight the guards. He knelt down slowly. He picked up the briefcase with both hands. He pressed the sticker back, in a place like it was something sacred. A few onlookers snickered. Vivian crossed her arms and watched with cold satisfaction. Nobody in that lobby knew what Christian Cole actually controlled. Nobody knew what was about to happen to their world. The guards walked him out, through the revolving glass doors, and into the bright Miami sun. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing slowly. His jaw was tight, but his eyes stayed steady. Something inside him had just shifted from patience to purpose. 15 minutes later, back inside the hotel, Vivian's assistant rushed toward her with a pale face. Her heels clicked frantically across the granite floor. The Aegis representative just canceled everything, the assistant said, breathless. He pulled the meeting. The whole $500 million offer is gone. Vivian frowned, confusion pulling at her sharp features. What representative? Nobody showed up. The assistant's hands shook slightly as she pulled up her phone. The assistant slid a tablet toward her. A photo filled the screen. It showed the man who had just been dragged out of her lobby. Under the photo, a caption read, Christian Cole, founder and CEO, Aegis Capital Group. Vivian's stomach dropped. Her whole body went cold. She had just thrown out the one man who held her company's future in his hands. Worst news came within the hour. A hotel guest had filmed the entire incident. The video showed Christian being pulled by two guards, still clutching his daughter's sticker-covered briefcase. It spread across social media by lunchtime. Comments piled up by the thousands. People called out the obvious bias. A single black father dismissed and dragged out over nothing but his clothes and his skin. News vans arrived outside the Horizon Apex within 2 hours. Reporters shouted questions at hotel staff walking in and out of the revolving doors. A local anchor read the story live at noon, her voice tight with disbelief. The clip aired again during the evening broadcast, this time with a caption calling it corporate arrogance caught on camera. Ethers Logistics stocks started sliding before the market even closed. Traders watched the ticker drop $9 in under an hour. Vivian tried calling Christian's office. Nobody answered. She tried emailing his assistant. No reply came. Her board of directors was furious, but not for the reason she expected. They were not angry that she had embarrassed a billionaire. They were angry that she might have cost them their last chance at survival. Fix this, the board chairman snapped over the phone, or you won't have a company left to run. Vivian sat alone in her office that night. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark window glass. For the first time in years, she felt something close to fear. Meanwhile, Christian set up in Arthur's small house near the port. A folding table became his new office, its metal legs wobbling on the uneven kitchen tile. Arthur introduced him to Doc's supervisors, who trusted no outsiders, but trusted Arthur completely. They arrived one at a time, after dark, careful not to be seen together. One supervisor, a woman named Renata, brought shipping logs nobody was supposed to see. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the papers down, glancing twice at the curtained window. Another brought whispered stories about ships that left port half empty on paper, but full in reality. Christian listened more than he spoke. He wrote almost nothing down. He wanted these workers to trust that their words would not end up as evidence used against them later. Renata mentioned a supervisor who quietly warned her to keep quiet or lose her pension. Another worker described watching cargo manifests get quietly altered before final sign-off. Small details, stacked together, slowly build a picture too large to ignore. Late one night, Christian's phone rang from a blocked number. A rough voice on the other end said, "Leave Miami, where your daughter learns what real trouble looks like." Christian's grip tightened on the phone. His knuckles turned pale. Blood rushed hot behind his ears for one long second. He said nothing back. He simply hung up and called his mother to check on Maya. That night, he sat outside on Arthur's back porch, listening to distant boat horns drift across the water. A single bulb buzzed overhead, drawing moths out of the dark. Arthur brought out 2 cups of black coffee and set one down beside him without a word. "Scared men make threats," Arthur said finally. "Brave men make phone calls to check on their kids instead of running." Christian let out a slow breath. The tightness in his chest eased just slightly. "I'm not running," he said. "I just needed to hear her laugh first." He heard his daughter's laugh through the phone speaker. "Daddy, my unicorn says you're a superhero," she said. "Superheroes don't get scared." Christian closed his eyes and let her voice steady him. 2 days later, a man in an expensive suit approached him at a coffee shop. Cologne trailed behind him, sharp and overpowering. He slid an envelope across the table without a word. Inside were 50 $100 bills, neatly banded together, still smelling faintly of fresh ink. "Consider this a peace offering," the man said smoothly. His smile stretched too wide, too practiced. "Go home, Mr. Cole. Forget what you think you saw." Christian had already started recording on his phone, hidden inside his jacket pocket. He slid the envelope back across the table. "Tell your bosses I don't forget easily," he said. The man's smile faded fast. He left without another word. That recording became one more piece in a growing puzzle. Arthur's notebook, Renata's shipping logs, and a bribery recording all pointed towards something bigger than bad management. The board of Ethris Logistics was planning something criminal. 3 aging cargo ships were scheduled for a final voyage on the 15th. Insurance records showed they were overvalued by millions. If those ships sank at sea, the company would collect a massive payout. Then leadership planned to blame dock workers for the failure and fire them without severance. 5,200 jobs sat on the edge of that scheme. Christian read through the numbers twice that night, sitting alone at the folding table. His stomach turned cold. This was not careless management. This was a plan built to destroy real lives for a payout. He thought of Thomas, the man who wrote him that first letter. He thought of the cracked union card sitting in his hotel drawer. These were not statistics. These were people with names, families, and mortgages. Christian needed proof. Real proof, not whispers. That meant getting into the port's records room, where old shipping routes were archived on paper nobody had digitized yet. He and Arthur drove to the docks just before midnight. Salt air mixed with diesel fumes. Metal containers creaked under the ocean breeze, a slow, groaning rhythm across the dark yard. Somewhere far off, a foghorn moaned twice. Christian slipped through a side door Arthur knew from decades of work there, the hinge letting out a thin, rusty whine. Inside, dust-coated rows of file cabinets. The air felt dry and still, thick with the smell of old paper and machine oil. His flashlight beam trembled slightly as he scanned label after label. He found the folder for the 3 ships within 20 minutes. Photocopies, route logs, insurance appraisals stamped with fake values. Headlights swept across the windows outside. A security patrol, ordered out by Vivian herself, rolled slowly through the yard. Christian ducked beneath a leaking oil truck. Grime soaked into his jeans. His expensive shoes sank into a puddle of dark liquid. He held the file against his chest and stayed perfectly still. The patrol truck rolled past without stopping. He waited 2 full minutes before moving again. His heartbeat slowed. He clutched the folder tighter and slipped back out into the night. Back at Arthur's house, he laid the papers across the kitchen table under a single hanging bulb. Arthur read through them silently, his weathered finger tracing each falsified number. Neither man spoke for a long while. "This is worse than I thought," Arthur finally said, voice low and rough. The next attack came from a different direction entirely. An anonymous email reached Christian's phone the following morning. Attached was a photo of Maya walking into her Chicago school, backpack on her shoulders, unaware she was being watched. The message underneath read, "Back off, or the world learns things about your daughter you don't want shared." Christian sat frozen in his hotel room at 3 a.m. Staring at that photo. His hands trembled slightly. For the first time since this began, he questioned everything. Was any amount of justice worth risking his daughter's safety? He called his mother again, just to hear that Maya was safe and asleep in her bed. His mother put the phone near Maya's door, so he could hear her soft breathing. He sat with that sound for a long time. Then he called Arthur. "They're scared," Christian said, his voice low and steady. "People only threaten children when they've run out of real weapons." Arthur didn't answer right away. Then he said simply, "So hit them where it actually hurts." At dawn, Christian requested one final meeting. Not with lawyers, not with the board, just Vivian Sinclair, alone at an old dockside office nobody used anymore. She arrived nervous, her usual confidence stripped away. Dark circles ringed her eyes. Her emerald dress had been replaced by a plain gray blazer, wrinkled from a sleepless night. The office smelled of dust and old salt water, nothing like the polished lobby where they first met. Christian placed a folder on the table between them. Insurance records, route logs, the recorded bribery attempt playing softly from his phone. Vivian's fingers gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles turning pale. Vivian's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. "They set this whole thing up," she whispered. "The board wanted a fall guy in case anyone asked questions. They picked me." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I'm not the villain here," she said, tears sliding down her face. "I'm just the one standing closest to the fire." Christian studied her carefully. Anger wasn't the emotion sitting in his chest anymore. Something closer to understanding had taken its place. "Then help me put it out," he said quietly. Vivian wiped her eyes and nodded. She reached in her bag and pulled out a small security drive. It held digital signatures and hidden transaction records from every board member involved in the scheme. "My father worked these docks," she admitted softly. "He died in an accident the company never took responsibility for. I built myself into someone cold, so nobody could hurt me the way they hurt him." Christian slid a napkin across the table without a word. It was a small gesture. It said more than any speech could have. The board discovered Vivian's betrayal within hours. They panicked and shut down the port's entire operating system. They blamed the outage on a cyber attack from Aegis Capital. Then they filed emergency legal papers accusing Christian of corporate espionage. Christian and Arthur had to move fast. A judge in Tallahassee could freeze the board's illegal plan, but only if they filed the right paperwork before 9 the next morning. They drove through pouring rain on a dark highway. Wipers slapped hard against the windshield, barely keeping pace with the storm. Just after 2:15 a.m., one of Arthur's old tires blew out with a loud crack. The car jerked hard toward the shoulder. Rain soaked both men as they worked together under the hood's weak light. Cold water ran down Christian's collar and into his shirt. Thunder cracked somewhere over the Everglades, lighting the sky for half a second. A billionaire and a retired dock worker kneeling side by side, changing a tire in a storm. Neither of them complained. Neither of them gave up. They tightened the last bolt just as the rain began to ease. They reached the courthouse just as the sun rose over the wet pavement, steam already rising off the parking lot. The emergency filing went through minutes before the deadline. 3 days later, Ethris Logistics held an emergency shareholder meeting inside the same hotel where Christian had first been dragged out. The board planned to remove Vivian and declare fake bankruptcy to escape the insurance fraud charges. The same gray granite floor gleamed under the chandeliers. The same soft jazz hummed faintly from hidden speakers. Board members shuffled papers, avoiding each other's eyes. Just as the chairman raised his gavel to finalize the vote, the doors swung open. A cold gust of air swept through the room, rattling the water glasses on the long table. Christian walked in wearing a perfectly tailored suit, dark and sharply cut. Arthur walked beside him, his weathered face calm and steady. Federal investigators followed close behind, folders tucked under their arms. Gasps rippled through the room. Chairs scraped against the floor as people turned to look. Nobody recognized the calm, sharply dressed man as the same person dragged out days earlier. Christian didn't raise his voice. He simply placed the emergency court order on the table and let the evidence speak. Financial records, recorded confessions, photos of the falsified insurance claims filled the screen behind him. One by one, board members were escorted out in handcuffs, while television cameras captured every second. Reporters pressed against the velvet rope outside, shouting questions nobody answered. As the chairman passed Christian, he spat on the floor near his feet. The wet mark landed just inches from Christian's polished shoe. Christian looked down at the mark calmly, then stepped over it without a word. He didn't need to answer cruelty with more cruelty. His silence spoke louder than shouting ever could. Vivian stood off to the side during the whole scene, arms wrapped around herself. She did not celebrate the arrests. She simply watched the system she once trusted collapse in front of her, piece by piece. Outside, sunlight bounced off news vans lined up along the curb. The same lobby that once dragged Christian out now held cameras aimed at the people who gave that order. 1 week later, the Port of Miami reopened under a completely different structure. The 5,200 dock workers now own their workplace together as a cooperative. Arthur Vance became its interim director, chosen by the very people he had once fought to protect. Christian's $500 million rescue deal transformed into preferred shares with no voting power placed directly into worker hands instead of corporate pockets. Vivian Sinclair showed up on her first day wearing a simple orange safety vest and plain work pants. She started as an entry-level dispatch coordinator, tracking shipping containers under the hot Miami sun. She didn't complain about the change. She showed up early and stayed late, learning the job from the ground up. Salt air drifted off the water, warm and clean, nothing like the grease and fear of that first lobby. Seagulls circled overhead, calling out over the low hum of crane engines. Workers in orange vests waved as containers swung gently through the air behind them. That afternoon, Christian walked along the sunlit pier, holding Maya's small hand. She pointed excitedly at every massive cargo ship gliding into port, her sneakers slapping softly against the wooden planks. Vivian spotted them from across the dock. She hesitated for a moment, then walked over slowly. She knelt down in front of Maya and held out a small paper bag. Inside was a brand new pink unicorn sticker, the kind little girls love. Maya smiled and peeled it off carefully. She reached up and pressed it onto her father's briefcase, right beside the faded original one. Christian gave Vivian a small, steady nod. It wasn't forgiveness spoken out loud, but it didn't need to be. Arthur watched from a nearby crane platform, arms crossed, a rare smile crossing his weathered face. The workers around him kept moving, kept working, kept building something that finally belonged to them. Christian thought back to that first morning, to syrup on Maya's chin and a pink sticker pressed onto worn leather. None of this had started with a business plan. It started with a little girl's small act of love, carried into a room that judged people by their shoes. Some debts get paid in dollars. Others get paid in quiet moments like this one, out on a sunny dock with a small girl's laughter carrying across the water.